Thank you for watching Geoeconomic Insight. Recently, I had the pleasure of interviewing Mr. John Garnaut, who leads Garnaut Global, a geopolitical risk advisory group. Mr. Garnaut previously served as Principal Advisor International to Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, and we're interviewing him as part of an attempt to better understand Australian views on China. His view is just one amongst many, but we believe that seeing this perspective will help you to better understand the wide variety of viewpoints on China held by Australian thought leaders. Hello, welcome to Geoeconomic Insight. I'm Andrew Capistrano, a visiting research fellow here at the Institute of Geoeconomics, and we're really pleased to be joined by John Garnaut, the founder of the risk advisory service Garnaut Global, and an expert on Chinese politics. So John, thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure, Andrew. Thank you for having us.
So I'd first like to just quickly ask what your view of what's going on in terms of the Chinese leadership. You know, we've heard about many top leaders from the PLA and elsewhere who have disappeared from public view, and I'm wondering what is this signal at the top there? Is there some kind of power struggle going on, or is it more of a Xi Jinping, ensuring ideological control?
So, Andrew, what we're seeing now is Xi Jinping purging people that he himself has put in place. The most stunning example of this is the disappearance since the twin sessions 5 weeks ago of the deputy chairman of the Central Military Commission, a guy called He Weidong. Now, He Weidong, General He, he made his name when he was commander of the Western Theatre. He was the guy that was overseeing what became that bloody border dispute with India a few years ago. He was promoted for that. He was promoted to be in charge of the Eastern Theatre. In that role, he oversaw, you may remember, the 2022 military blockade exercises to welcome Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan in 2022. That was He Weidong. And he was promoted again to be in this extremely important position, one of 2 deputy chairmen of the Central Military Commission. So his disappearance has been interpreted by some as signs of a power struggle. We see it differently. We see the logic here re-emerging that was in place during the Mao era and even the Stalin era before that. And to quote Stalin himself in his History of the Short Course of the Bolsheviks, you purge the party to make it strong.
Right.
So purging in this system under an unquestioned, unassailable leader, it's a sign of strength. That doesn't mean it's not interesting. It's very interesting. And it means one of a few things. One, there's no doubt that corruption is endemic in the People's Liberation Army. The purges of only a year ago of the rocket force were epic in scale, and there were strong indications that was related to huge problems of corruption that led to capability problems and deficiencies in China's all-important nuclear arsenal, missile and space capabilities. So probably John Weidong is involved and embroiled in those kinds of problems. But probably more immediately, there are instrumental reasons for purging people. It's not just punishment for past deeds. If corruption is endemic, then it could apply to anybody. He Weidong was, in my view, purged because Xi Jinping is putting in place the people that he wants beside him if a Taiwan crisis emerges in the next few years. This is about alignment. This is about having people that are absolutely trustworthy and capable, if necessary, to lead operations in a military adventure. These are people who he can rely on to build the capability, to be honest in the reporting about capabilities, to lead operations between different parts of the People's Liberation Army, which has never been a strong point of the PLA. So this is a short-term signal of chaos, really, to decapitate the military like this. But medium-term, the reason that He Weidong and others have been purged is to make the PLA a more formidable fighting force in the medium term.
Thank you. That's fascinating. So, to kind of expand on this idea of strengthening power within the PLA, how about another group that has recently come back to authority in China, which is the private sector? So we know that Xi Jinping attempted to, bring the private sector under his control, and these were some kind of rollout meetings in February and March that gave the impression that the private sector was once again on the side of Xi and the party. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on the role of the private sector in this new moment.
Look, they're good questions, Andrew, and one that our firm, Garnaut Global, is looking at closely because it has huge implications for the competitors of the private sector and potential counterparties. And, they're our clients, asset managers and corporations. So I think that the February 17 Forum of Entrepreneurs, which Xi Jinping attended and which was plastered on the front page of the People's Daily the next day, no doubt that was a significant event. It's the first time that China's leading entrepreneurs have been paraded in Xi Jinping's company for a long time, for at least 3 or 4 years, since the rectification campaigns began in 2020-21. But I think that this forum has also been very misinterpreted because this was, rather than being a sign of the rehabilitation of the tech moguls, it was something different. We saw Pony Ma, head of Tencent, even Jack Ma, head of Alibaba, and many, many others, even including Liang Wenfeng, the founder of DeepSeek. People like Jack Ma, the reason they were able to shake Xi Jinping's hand and be paraded on CCTV is not because they've suddenly been liberated and given control of their company back. Quite the opposite. They are now trusted to serve the party, and Xi Jinping it's pretty much said as much, that your job is to serve the party, serve the country, go out and do it. So this is not a change of policy towards the private sector. It was a sign that Xi Jinping is satisfied that the rectification campaign has worked, and as Mao Zedong said, the purpose of rectification is to save the patient, not to doctor him to death.
Exactly. Well, so now we talked about the Chinese politics as it relates to the military, as it relates to the private sector. So let's take a more international view. So we saw that 200 attendees from 50 countries met in Chongqing to discuss engaging with the Chinese economy. And we saw that the Chinese government was essentially attempting to teach them about Xi Jinping thought, as well as to maybe get them to become greater channels for foreign direct investment. So in that context, and in the context of the US-China trade and financial competition, how do you think the Chinese elite is viewing the world situation right now in terms of economics and politics?
So I think the meeting you referred to is indeed very interesting. It's a meeting hosted by, I think, the International Liaison Department a couple of days ago. And this is United Front work. This is about trying to co-opt representatives of international business. The leaders this was not a particularly high-level forum compared to what we've seen only a month earlier, compared to the China Development Forum, where CEOs from major companies in the United States, and particularly Europe, were assembled in Beijing, and then a subsection of them stayed around to meet Xi Jinping. So those three meetings together show a major effort to some degree co-opt international business. And whether or not that succeeds is an open question. Those business leaders are expected to walk away with some pretty important messaging. One is that you can make profits, your opportunities to make profits in China still exist, but it is conditional on not opposing the party's interests. So those business leaders will be expected to at least second guess themselves when making decisions which might look like aligning with Trump administration programs to, in China's terms, constrain China's development. So this is a classic example of what Xi Jinping calls cooperation and struggle. Oh. You cooperate, you lay out the red carpet, but every international interaction from Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party, embedded in that cooperation is the prospect, the potential for struggle. And at any stage, he may flick the switch to struggle. So I think this is not a sign of a change of direction. It is just an example of the same tactical program of both cooperating with the private sector where possible and struggling against them where necessary. So I again don't read too much significance into these events, except it's a reminder that the Chinese Communist Party is always trying.
Great. And so, and lastly, in that context, how do you see the US-China relationship evolving from both the Chinese side and the American side? Is this economic competition going to lead China to advance further and to be an actual competitor? Do you see the international financial system tilting more towards China? Or do you think the US has more strengths than is being acknowledged at this time?
This is an epical moment. In our view, we've just entered a new paradigm of geopolitics and geoeconomics just in the last few weeks. This is inherently unstable, uncertain, unpredictable, and for all of the United States and the Western world's dominance in technology, huge dominance in financial markets, the question is the ability to use that leverage effectively against what is now in increasingly stark terms a strategic competition, perhaps even zero sum with China. On the financial market competition, well, China has pretty much insulated itself from its dependencies from outside capital. It's fairly self-sufficient for capital. There's a contest for international reach at the moment. The United States is winning hands down with its US dollar and SWIFT system and its dominance as the world's favoured financial reserve currency. We're seeing that status take a bit of a hit in the last couple of weeks, and there'll have to be some stabilisation. There'll have to be a whole lot of trade deals done very quickly for the US to be able to arrest this slide that we're beginning to see. On the technology side, the more we look at China's development, the more we may remain convinced that the United States still has enormous technology advantages at the frontier, at the technology frontier, particularly in AI and its ability to build these monstrously large and capable large language models built on incredibly sophisticated compute power, fed by these cutting-edge chips, NVIDIA chips in particular, which China no longer has access to. So, the US advantage in being able to build and develop these large language models is still formidable and possibly still growing over time. But what may matter in the end is the ability to manufacture, to industrialize these capabilities at scale. And this is where China has formidable advantages. And Andrew, we were talking earlier about the 2025 program that was launched 10 years ago in China, and all of those objectives that China set out to achieve in achieving manufacturing dominance have been broadly met. So what's going to be the China 2035 document that hasn't been released? I'm sure it probably won't be publicly released. But the competition now is who's going to lead the field in dominating the application of AI more than the development of AI. And I'm going to just note one more thing put a marker here, one thing to watch. One thing to watch is the development of Huawei's new Harmony operating system, which I think has profound implications not only for the global cell phone market, but also the wider Internet of Things.
Wow, so that's great. I completely agree. This is an epochal moment. It's going to be a very interesting next 4, 5, 10 years. And I think that your clients at Garnaut Global are lucky to have you to explain these dynamics to them. So thank you so much for joining us on Geoeconomic Insight. I'm sure our viewers really learned from your very distinguished remarks. So thank you again for watching Geoeconomic Insight. I'm Andrew Capistrano for the Institute of Geoeconomics.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you for giving me the honour of having lunch with your formidable team here at the Institute of Geoeconomics. Thank you.
Thank you.